The air is thick with the clash of steel and the cries of soldiers. Somewhere in the distance, church bells toll, their echoes mingling with the chaos of battle. This is the world of Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl who would rise to become one of history's most enigmatic figures. At just 13 years old, she claimed to hear voices that would lead her to defy kings, inspire armies, and change the course of a nation. But were these voices a divine gift, guiding her to save France from ruin, or were they the whispers of madness, a product of a mind fractured by the turmoil of her time? This is the mystery that has captivated historians, theologians, and storytellers for centuries. Was Joan of Arc a chosen messenger of heaven, or a tragic figure lost in the fog of her own mind? Join us as we unravel the extraordinary life of Joan of Arc, a tale of faith, courage, and the enduring question of what it means to hear the divine. Stay with us, because by the end of this journey, you'll find yourself questioning where the line between heaven and madness truly lies. Now, let's step back in time to the quiet village of Domrémy, nestled in the rolling hills of northeastern France. This is where Joan of Arc's story begins, far from the battlefields and royal courts that would later define her life. Born into a family of modest farmers, Joan's early years were shaped by the rhythms of rural life, tending to livestock, helping with the harvest, and attending church with her devout parents. Her father, Jacques, was a respected figure in the community, known for his hard work and strong moral character, while her mother, Isabelle, instilled in Joan a deep sense of faith and piety. In 15th century France, life for a peasant girl was far from glamorous. Society was rigidly structured, with little room for upward mobility, especially for women. Girls like Joan were expected to marry young, raise families, and live lives bound by tradition. Yet, even in this constrained environment, Joan stood out. Neighbors later recalled her as unusually devout, spending hours in prayer and showing a keen interest in the stories of saints and martyrs. This spiritual fervor, combined with the hardships of her daily life, would later fuel her conviction that she was destined for something greater. The world Joan grew up in was also one of turmoil. The 100 Years' War had already ravaged France for decades, and the English occupation loomed large over the countryside. Villages like Domrémy were not spared from the violence and uncertainty of the times. Joan would have heard stories of battles, sieges, and the suffering of her people, all of which likely shaped her sense of duty and her belief that divine intervention was needed to save France. It was this unique combination of faith, hardship, and exposure to the struggles of her nation that set the stage for Joan's extraordinary claims. Her humble beginnings may seem worlds apart from the grandeur of her later achievements, but they were the foundation upon which her mission was built. From the fields of Domrémy to the halls of power, Joan's early life was a crucible, forging the resilience and determination that would define her legacy. As we move forward, we'll see how these formative years prepared Joan for the challenges ahead, and how her simple, rural upbringing became the unlikely starting point for one of history's most remarkable journeys. Now, let's turn our attention to a moment that would change Joan's life forever. The day she first heard the voices. At just 13 years old, Joan was in her father's garden when she experienced something extraordinary. She later described it as a blinding light, accompanied by a voice that spoke to her with clarity and authority. This voice, she claimed, belonged to Saint Michael, the archangel known as a protector and warrior in Christian tradition. But this was only the beginning. Soon, Joan began to hear other voices, those of Saint Catherine and Saint Margaret, two revered saints known for their piety and courage. These voices were not fleeting or vague. Joan recounted that they spoke to her regularly, offering guidance and reassurance. They told her that she had a divine mission to save France from its enemies and ensure the coronation of Charles VII, the rightful king. For a young girl growing up in a small village, this was an overwhelming revelation. Imagine the weight of such a message being told that you, a peasant girl, were chosen by heaven to lead a nation. The emotional impact on Joan was profound. She described feeling both awe and fear, torn between the honor of being chosen and the enormity of the task ahead. Her faith, already deep and unwavering, became the anchor that steadied her in the face of these extraordinary claims. Yet, this experience also set her apart from her peers. While other girls her age were focused on daily chores and thoughts of marriage, Joan was grappling with visions and a sense of destiny that few could understand. Spiritually, the voices transformed Joan's life. They gave her a sense of purpose that went beyond the confines of her village. She began to see herself not just as a farmer's daughter, but as an instrument of divine will. This newfound conviction would later drive her to take bold steps, from seeking an audience with the Dauphin to leading armies into battle. But what did these voices mean? Were they truly a heavenly gift, as Joan believed, or something else entirely? This question lies at the heart of her story, and it's one we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into her journey. For now, let's consider how this pivotal moment, her first encounter with the voices, set the stage for everything that followed, shaping not only Joan's destiny but also the fate of a nation. To understand the significance of Joan's mission, we need to step back and examine the world she was born into, a world of chaos, conflict, and uncertainty. France in the early 15th century was a nation in crisis, torn apart by the 100 Years' War, a prolonged struggle between the French and English crowns that had dragged on for decades. This wasn't just a war between two kingdoms, it was a fight for survival, identity, and the very soul of a fractured nation. The roots of the conflict stretched back to the mid-14th century, when disputes over the French throne erupted into open warfare. The English king, Edward III, claimed the crown of France through his mother's lineage, a claim the French nobility fiercely rejected. What began as a dynastic quarrel soon spiraled into a series of devastating battles, sieges, and political betrayals that left France reeling. By the time Joan was born in the early 15th century, the war had already raged for more than 70 years, and the toll on France was catastrophic. The French countryside was ravaged by armies, both foreign and domestic. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, and entire regions left in ruins. The people of France, already burdened by heavy taxes and the demands of war, faced famine, disease, and despair. To make matters worse, the French monarchy was in disarray. King Charles VI, known as Charles the Mad, suffered from bouts of mental illness that left him unable to rule effectively. His court was riven by factions, with powerful nobles vying for control and often aligning with the English to further their own ambitions. The English, meanwhile, had gained a strong foothold in France. After their stunning victory at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, they controlled vast swaths of French territory, including key cities like Paris and Rouen. The Dauphin, Charles VII, the heir to the French throne, was effectively sidelined, his authority undermined by his own family and the English-backed Burgundians. France was not just at war with England, it was at war with itself, divided and demoralized. It was into this fractured, desperate world that Joan's voices spoke. The turmoil of the 100 Years' War created a fertile ground for her mission, not just because of the physical destruction, but because of the spiritual and emotional void it left behind. The people of France were searching for hope, for a sign that their suffering had meaning. Joan's claim of divine guidance offered exactly that, a promise that heaven had not abandoned them, that their cause was just, and that victory was possible. The political instability and English occupation also played a crucial role in shaping Joan's mission. With the French monarchy weakened and the Dauphin's legitimacy questioned, Joan's voices provided a powerful counter-narrative. They framed her mission as not just a military endeavor, but a sacred duty to restore God's chosen king to the throne. In a time when faith and politics were deeply intertwined, this message resonated deeply with both the common people and those in power. As we'll see in the next chapter of Joan's story, this turbulent backdrop didn't just shape her mission, it made it possible. The chaos of the 100 Years' War set the stage for a young peasant girl to rise from obscurity and become a symbol of hope and resistance. But it also placed immense pressure on her shoulders as she stepped into a world where the stakes were nothing less than the survival of a nation. With the stage set by the chaos of the 100 Years' War, Joan's mission to save France began to take shape. At just 17 years old, she set out from her village of Domrémy with an unshakable belief in her divine calling. Her first challenge was to convince those in power to take her seriously, a task that seemed impossible for a young peasant girl in a world dominated by men. Yet, Joan's determination was unmatched. Guided by her voices, she traveled to the town of Vaucouleurs, where she sought the support of Robert de Baudricourt, a local garrison commander. At first, he dismissed her as a delusional child, but Joan's unwavering conviction and the growing support of the townspeople eventually persuaded him to grant her an escort to the Dauphin, Charles VII. The journey to Chinon, where Charles was staying, was fraught with danger. Traveling through enemy-held territory, Joan and her small party had to navigate treacherous roads and avoid English patrols. But Joan's faith never wavered. She saw every obstacle as a test of her resolve, a chance to prove her worthiness for the mission she believed God had entrusted to her. When she finally arrived at Chinon, she faced another hurdle, gaining an audience with the Dauphin himself. The court was skeptical, and many advisors dismissed her as a fraud or a heretic. Yet, Joan's charisma and confidence began to turn the tide. She insisted on meeting Charles directly, and when she did, she delivered a message that would change the course of history. According to legend, Joan identified Charles immediately, despite his attempt to blend in with the crowd, and revealed a secret known only to him, a sign, she claimed, of her divine mission. Whether this story is true or not, it underscores the power of Joan's presence. She spoke with such conviction and clarity that even the most hardened skeptics began to take her seriously. Charles, desperate for a way to reclaim his throne, saw in Joan a potential solution to his problems. After a thorough examination by theologians to ensure her orthodoxy, he granted her permission to join the French army and lead them into battle. Joan's role in the military was unprecedented. She wasn't just a figurehead, she actively participated in strategy discussions, inspired the troops with her speeches, and even carried her own banner into battle. Her presence had an electrifying effect on the French soldiers, who saw her as a living symbol of hope and divine favor. She wore armor, rode at the front of the army, and led by example, embodying the courage and determination she demanded of others. Her voices guided her every step, providing instructions that often defied conventional military wisdom, but yielded remarkable results. What made Joan truly extraordinary was her ability to unite people. She bridged the gap between the common folk and the nobility, between the spiritual and the political. Her mission wasn't just about defeating the English, it was about restoring faith in God, in the monarchy, and in the future of France. Her charisma and conviction turned a fractured, demoralized nation into a force capable of reclaiming its destiny. And as we'll see in the next chapter of her story, this mission would lead her to one of the most pivotal moments in the 100 Years' War, the Siege of Orléans. As Joan's story unfolds, one question looms larger than any other. Were her voices a divine gift or a sign of madness? This central mystery has fascinated historians, theologians, and psychologists for centuries. To understand it, we need to look closely at the nature of these voices, how often they spoke, what they said, and how Joan responded to them. Joan claimed that the voices began when she was just 13 years old, and they continued to guide her throughout her life. She described them as clear and distinct, often accompanied by visions of saints like Michael, Catherine, and Margaret. These voices didn't just offer vague encouragement, they gave specific instructions, from telling her to cut her hair and dress as a man to directing her military strategies. Joan's unwavering obedience to these commands suggests she believed they were divine in origin. But what did her contemporaries think? In the medieval world, the line between the spiritual and the psychological was often blurred. People of that time believed deeply in divine intervention. Miracles, visions, and heavenly messages were seen as real and powerful. Saints and angels were thought to communicate with the faithful, especially in times of crisis. For many, Joan's voices fit neatly into this framework. She was seen as a chosen instrument of God, sent to deliver France from its enemies. At the same time, medieval society also had its own understanding of mental health. Conditions like melancholy or madness were often attributed to supernatural causes, such as demonic possession or divine punishment. Joan's critics, particularly those aligned with the English, used this to their advantage. They accused her of being delusional or even influenced by evil spirits, framing her voices as a sign of heresy rather than holiness. This debate, divine inspiration versus mental instability, has persisted for centuries. Modern scholars have offered various explanations, from epilepsy and migraines to auditory hallucinations caused by stress or trauma. Yet, none of these theories fully account for the precision and consistency of Joan's voices, nor do they explain her remarkable achievements. What's clear is that Joan's voices were central to her identity and mission. Whether divine or delusional, they shaped her actions and inspired those around her. As we move forward in her story, we'll see how these voices guided her through some of the most critical moments of her life, including the Siege of Orléans and her eventual capture. But for now, the question remains, were they a heavenly gift or a product of medieval madness? The answer, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. As we turn our attention to Joan's military campaigns, it's impossible to overlook the Siege of Orléans, a turning point not only in her story but in the 100 Years' War itself. When Joan arrived at Orléans in April 1429, the city had been under English siege for months. The French forces were demoralized and the situation seemed dire. But Joan's presence changed everything. Clad in armor and carrying her iconic banner, she brought with her an unshakable belief in her divine mission. Her confidence was contagious, and it reignited the fighting spirit of the French troops. Joan's role in the Siege of Orléans wasn't just symbolic. She actively participated in the planning and execution of military strategies. Her voices, she claimed, guided her decisions, from choosing the timing of attacks to rallying soldiers at critical moments. One of her most notable contributions was her insistence on a bold, aggressive approach. While seasoned military leaders favored caution, Joan pushed for swift, decisive action. Her unconventional tactics paid off. Within just 9 days, the French forces broke the siege, marking a stunning victory that shifted the momentum of the war. But Joan's success didn't come without challenges. Many of the French commanders were skeptical of her from the start. A young, inexperienced peasant girl claiming to hear divine voices was hardly the kind of leader they were used to following. Some questioned her judgment, while others outright dismissed her as a liability. Yet, Joan's determination and her ability to inspire the troops gradually won over even her harshest critics. Her victories spoke for themselves, and her unwavering faith in her mission gave her a unique authority on the battlefield. Beyond Orléans, Joan played a crucial role in other key battles, including the Loire campaign and the decisive victory at Patay. Her presence on the battlefield was more than just strategic, it was psychological. The English troops, who had once been confident in their dominance, began to fear her. To them, she was an enigma, a figure who seemed to defy the natural order. For the French, she was a beacon of hope, a living symbol of divine favor. Joan's military campaigns were marked by a blend of boldness, intuition, and an almost supernatural sense of timing. Whether her decisions were guided by divine voices or her own innate understanding of warfare, the results were undeniable. She didn't just win battles, she transformed the morale of an entire nation. As we move forward in her story, we'll see how these victories paved the way for one of the most significant moments in her life, the coronation of Charles VII. But for now, let's reflect on how a young girl from Domrémy became one of history's most unlikely and effective military leaders. With the momentum of her military victories behind her, Joan's next mission was one of profound political and spiritual significance, the coronation of Charles VII. This moment wasn't just about crowning a king, it was about restoring faith in a fractured nation. Joan believed deeply that Charles's coronation at Reims, the traditional site for French kings, would fulfill her divine mission and prove his rightful claim to the throne. Joan's determination to see Charles crowned was unwavering. She convinced him to march to Reims, a journey fraught with danger as it required passing through territories controlled by the English and their allies. Many of Charles's advisors were hesitant, fearing the risks involved, but Joan's conviction was unshakable. She argued that the coronation would unite the French people and solidify Charles's legitimacy, not just as a ruler but as God's chosen king. Her voices, she insisted, had guided her to this moment. The journey to Reims was a testament to Joan's influence and the growing trust in her mission. Along the way, towns and cities that had been under English control began to surrender to Charles's forces, often without a fight. Joan's presence, her reputation as a divinely inspired leader, and the victories she had already achieved inspired both fear in her enemies and hope in her allies. By the time they reached Reims, the path had been cleared and the stage was set for a historic event. On July 17, 1429, Charles VII was crowned King of France in the majestic Reims Cathedral. Joan stood by his side, her banner held high, a symbol of her unwavering faith and her role in making this moment possible. For many, the coronation was proof of Joan's divine mission. It wasn't just a political ceremony, it was a spiritual affirmation that God was on the side of France. The coronation had far-reaching implications. It transformed Charles from a disputed claimant into the legitimate king, bolstering French morale and weakening the English position. For Joan, it was the culmination of her mission to save France. Yet, even as the crowd celebrated, Joan remained focused on the task ahead. She believed her work wasn't finished until the English were driven from French soil entirely. This pivotal moment in Joan's story not only solidified her place in history but also deepened the mystery surrounding her voices. Were they truly divine guidance, or was there something else at play? As we move forward, we'll explore how Joan's triumphs began to unravel, leading to her capture and the trial that would define her legacy. But for now, let's pause to reflect on how a young peasant girl from Domrémy helped crown a king and change the course of history. As the celebrations of Charles VII's coronation faded, Joan's fortunes took a dramatic turn. Despite her recent triumphs, the tides of war were unpredictable, and Joan's unwavering determination to drive the English out of France would soon lead her into peril. In May of 1430, during a skirmish near Compiègne, Joan found herself surrounded by Burgundian forces. These soldiers, allied with the English, saw her as a prize worth capturing. In a desperate attempt to rally her troops, Joan was pulled from her horse and taken prisoner. This marked the beginning of a harrowing chapter in her life, one that would test her faith and resilience like never before. Joan's capture was a devastating blow to the French cause. The Burgundians, recognizing her value, quickly transferred her to their English allies in exchange for a substantial sum. For the English, Joan was more than just a prisoner. She was a symbol of French resistance that needed to be silenced. Her imprisonment was not just a physical confinement, but a calculated effort to break her spirit and discredit her divine mission. The conditions of Joan's captivity were brutal. She was held in a series of damp, dark cells, often chained and under constant guard. The English subjected her to harsh treatment, denying her basic comforts and isolating her from allies who might have offered support. Despite these hardships, Joan remained steadfast, drawing strength from her faith and the voices that had guided her throughout her journey. Yet, the psychological toll of her confinement was immense. Cut off from the outside world and facing relentless interrogation, Joan had to endure not only physical suffering but also the weight of knowing her enemies sought to destroy everything she stood for. Her captors were determined to undermine her credibility. They accused her of heresy and witchcraft, aiming to dismantle the divine authority she claimed. The English saw her trial as an opportunity to not only punish Joan, but also to delegitimize Charles VII's reign by discrediting the woman who had helped crown him. For Joan, the stakes were unimaginably high. Her imprisonment was not just a personal ordeal but a battle for her legacy and the future of France. As we delve deeper into Joan's story, we'll explore the trial that would define her final days and the extraordinary courage she displayed in the face of overwhelming adversity. But for now, let's reflect on the immense challenges Joan faced during her captivity, a period that tested her faith, her resolve, and her unyielding belief in her divine mission. Her imprisonment was more than a physical confinement. It was a crucible that would shape her enduring legacy as a symbol of courage and conviction. As Joan's imprisonment stretched on, the stage was set for one of the most infamous trials in history. The English, determined to dismantle her influence, orchestrated a legal proceeding that was as much a political maneuver as it was a judicial one. Joan was brought before a court led by Pierre Cauchon, the Bishop of Beauvais, a man deeply loyal to the English crown. From the outset, the trial was anything but fair. The charges against Joan, heresy and witchcraft, were carefully chosen to undermine her divine claims and tarnish her reputation as a messenger of God. The trial began in January of 1431, and from the very first day, it was clear that Joan's fate had already been decided. The court was stacked with judges and clerics who were hostile to her cause, and the proceedings were riddled with bias. Joan was denied legal representation, and the questions posed to her were designed to trap her into admitting guilt. Despite her lack of formal education, Joan displayed remarkable intelligence and composure, often outmaneuvering her interrogators with sharp, thoughtful responses. One of the central points of contention was Joan's insistence that her voices were divine. The court sought to prove that these voices were either demonic or delusional, using her claims as evidence of heresy. They pressed her relentlessly, demanding she reveal the exact nature of her visions and whether she had made pacts with supernatural forces. Joan, however, refused to renounce her voices, maintaining that they were sent by God to guide her in her mission. Her unwavering faith only deepened the court's determination to break her. The political motivations behind the trial were impossible to ignore. By convicting Joan of heresy, the English aimed to discredit Charles VII's coronation, which she had played a pivotal role in securing. If Joan's divine mission could be proven false, it would cast doubt on the legitimacy of Charles's rule and weaken French morale. The trial was not just about Joan, it was a calculated attempt to destabilize the French monarchy and solidify English control over France. Despite the overwhelming odds, Joan's courage never wavered. She faced her accusers with a quiet strength, refusing to be intimidated by their threats or manipulations. Her resilience in the face of such adversity only added to her growing legend. Yet the trial's outcome was never in doubt. After months of relentless questioning and psychological pressure, Joan was found guilty of heresy and sentenced to death. As we move forward, we'll explore the final moments of Joan's life and the profound impact her trial and execution had on France and the world. But for now, let's reflect on the extraordinary bravery Joan displayed during her trial, a testament to her unshakable faith and her determination to stand by her convictions, even in the face of certain doom. Her trial was not just a legal proceeding, it was a battle for her soul, her legacy, and the future of a nation. As the trial pressed on, Joan's defiance and courage became increasingly evident, shining through the darkness of her circumstances. Despite the relentless pressure from her accusers, she stood firm in her convictions, refusing to renounce the voices that had guided her since she was a young girl. Her unwavering faith in their divine origin was unshakable, even as the court sought to twist her words and force her into submission. One of the most striking moments came when Joan was asked to sign a document recanting her claims. Faced with the threat of immediate execution, she hesitated, but only briefly. In a moment of profound clarity, she retracted her earlier agreement to recant, declaring that her voices had returned and reaffirmed her mission. This act of defiance was not just a rejection of the court's authority. It was a bold reaffirmation of her faith and her belief in her divine purpose. Joan's resilience was not just a matter of stubbornness, it was rooted in a deep sense of duty and an unbreakable connection to her spiritual convictions. She understood the stakes not just for herself but for the future of France. By refusing to back down, she ensured that her legacy would be one of courage and integrity rather than compromise and defeat. Her steadfastness in the face of overwhelming odds became a defining aspect of her story, inspiring countless generations to come. What makes Joan's defiance even more remarkable is the context in which it occurred. She was a young woman, barely 19 years old, standing alone against some of the most powerful figures of her time. She had no formal education, no legal representation, and no allies in the courtroom. Yet she outmaneuvered her interrogators time and again, using her sharp wit and unshakable faith to counter their accusations. Her ability to remain composed under such intense pressure is a testament to her extraordinary strength of character. Joan's courage extended beyond the courtroom as well. Even in the face of death, she refused to abandon her beliefs. Her final moments before her execution were marked by the same quiet strength that had defined her throughout the trial. She asked for a cross to hold as she faced the flames, a poignant reminder of her unwavering faith and her belief in the righteousness of her cause. As we reflect on Joan's defiance and courage, it's impossible not to be moved by the sheer magnitude of her resilience. Her refusal to recant, her steadfast faith, and her unyielding spirit in the face of persecution have cemented her place in history as a symbol of bravery and conviction. Her legacy is not just one of martyrdom, but of the enduring power of standing firm in one's beliefs, no matter the cost. With this in mind, we now turn to the final chapter of Joan's life, her execution, and the profound impact it had on France and the world. Her story, though tragic, continues to inspire and challenge us to consider the true meaning of courage and faith. As we move into the final chapter of Joan's life, the story takes a somber turn. On the morning of May 30th, 1431, Joan of Arc was led to the marketplace in Rouen to face her execution. The air was heavy with tension as a crowd gathered to witness the tragic end of a young woman who had once been hailed as a savior of France. Bound to a wooden stake, Joan remained composed, her eyes fixed on a small cross held by a sympathetic priest. Her final words were a prayer, a quiet yet powerful testament to her unwavering faith even in the face of death. The flames rose, and with them, the hopes of many who had believed in Joan's divine mission. Her death was not just a physical end, but a symbolic moment that resonated far beyond the marketplace. For the English and their allies, it was a victory, a way to silence a figure who had become a rallying point for French resistance. But for the French people, Joan's execution was a profound loss, a blow to their morale, and a stark reminder of the brutality of their oppressors. In the immediate aftermath, the public reaction was mixed. Some in the crowd wept openly, moved by the courage and piety of the young woman they had just seen perish. Others, swayed by the propaganda of her accusers, viewed her death as a necessary act to rid the world of a heretic. Yet, even among those who had condemned her, there were whispers of doubt. The executioner himself reportedly confessed that he feared for his soul, haunted by the belief that he had burned a saint. The symbolism of Joan's death was undeniable. Her martyrdom transformed her from a fallen warrior into an enduring symbol of resistance and faith. The flames that consumed her body could not extinguish the spark she had ignited in the hearts of the French people. Her death became a rallying cry, a reminder of the cost of freedom and the power of standing firm in one's beliefs. For France, Joan's execution marked a turning point. While her death was a moment of despair, it also galvanized the nation. Her sacrifice inspired renewed determination among the French forces, who saw her as a martyr for their cause. Over time, her legacy grew, shaping the collective memory of a nation that would eventually rise from the ashes of war. Joan's story did not end with her death. Instead, it became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, courage and faith can light the way. Her martyrdom was not just a tragedy, but a testament to the enduring power of conviction, a lesson that continues to resonate centuries later. With this in mind, we now turn to the efforts to clear Joan's name and the remarkable journey that would eventually see her transformed from a condemned heretic into a national hero and saint. Her story, though marked by suffering, is ultimately one of triumph, a legacy that continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. As the flames of Joan's execution faded, the story of her life and legacy was far from over. In the years following her death, a quiet but determined movement began to take shape, one aimed at clearing her name and restoring her honor. This chapter of Joan's story, often overlooked, is as compelling as her rise to prominence. The first steps toward Joan's rehabilitation came from an unexpected source: Charles VII, the very king she had helped crown. Though he had done little to save her during her trial, Charles recognized the political and symbolic value of vindicating Joan. In 1450, nearly 20 years after her death, he ordered a retrial to re-examine the charges against her. This was not just an act of justice, but a calculated move to strengthen his own legitimacy and rally the French people. The retrial, known as the nullification trial, was a meticulous process. Witnesses who had known Joan, soldiers, priests, villagers, and even some who had testified against her, were called to recount her life and actions. Their testimonies painted a vivid picture of a devout, courageous young woman who had acted out of faith and love for her country. The trial revealed the many irregularities and biases of her original trial, exposing it as a politically motivated sham. In 1456, the verdict was finally announced. Joan of Arc was declared innocent of all charges. Her name was cleared and her reputation restored. This verdict was more than a legal victory, it was a moral triumph. Joan, once condemned as a heretic, was now celebrated as a martyr and a hero. The impact of her rehabilitation was profound. For the French people, it was a moment of vindication and pride. Joan's story became a symbol of resilience and divine favor, reinforcing the idea that France was a nation chosen by God. Her transformation from a condemned heretic to a national hero was complete, and her legacy began to take on a life of its own. But Joan's rehabilitation was not just about the past, it also shaped the future. Her story inspired generations of French leaders and citizens, reminding them of the power of faith, courage, and conviction. It also set the stage for her eventual canonization, a process that would take centuries but would cement her place in history as one of the most extraordinary figures of the medieval world. As we reflect on this pivotal moment in Joan's story, it's clear that her rehabilitation was more than a legal process, it was a reclaiming of her identity and her mission. Her legacy, once tarnished by the flames of Rouen, now burned brightly as a beacon of hope and inspiration. And with this renewed recognition, Joan's journey took another remarkable turn, one that would see her elevated to sainthood and immortalized in the hearts of millions. As Joan's story continued to inspire and resonate across generations, her journey took yet another extraordinary turn, one that would elevate her from a national hero to a figure of universal reverence. The path to her canonization, however, was neither swift nor straightforward. It was a process that spanned centuries, reflecting the evolving perceptions of her life and legacy within the Catholic Church. The seeds of Joan's sainthood were sown long before her official recognition. In the years following her rehabilitation, her story became a powerful symbol of faith and devotion, not just in France but across Europe. Pilgrims began to visit sites associated with her life, and her name was invoked in prayers and hymns. Yet, the formal process of canonization required more than popular devotion. It demanded rigorous examination and approval by the Church. The first significant step toward her sainthood came in the late 19th century, when Pope Leo XIII declared her venerable, a title acknowledging her heroic virtue. This was a crucial milestone, as it signaled the Church's recognition of Joan's extraordinary faith and moral character. But the road to sainthood was far from over. The next step, beatification, required evidence of a miracle attributed to her intercession. This was achieved in 1909 when Pope Pius X declared her blessed, following the reported healing of a nun who had prayed to Joan. Finally, in 1920, Joan of Arc was canonized as a saint by Pope Benedict XV. Her canonization was a moment of profound significance, not just for the Church but for the world. It marked the official recognition of her sanctity and her place among the most revered figures in Christian history. But why did it take nearly 500 years for the Church to canonize her? The answer lies in the complex interplay of politics, theology, and cultural memory. For centuries, Joan's story was entangled with the political and religious conflicts of her time. Her trial and execution had been deeply political, and her rehabilitation was equally so. The Church, wary of endorsing figures associated with controversy, moved cautiously. Additionally, the process of canonization itself evolved over time, becoming more formalized and rigorous. By the early 20th century, however, Joan's legacy had transcended these complexities. She was no longer just a historical figure. She had become a universal symbol of courage, faith, and resilience. Her canonization also reflected the Church's desire to reclaim her as a model of Catholic virtue. In a world increasingly shaped by secularism and skepticism, Joan's unwavering faith and devotion offered a powerful counter-narrative. She embodied the ideals of piety, obedience, and self-sacrifice, qualities that the Church sought to highlight in an era of rapid change. Today, Saint Joan of Arc stands as a testament to the enduring power of faith and conviction. Her canonization not only honored her life but also cemented her legacy as a beacon of hope and inspiration for millions around the world. And as we move forward in her story, we'll explore how her voices, whether divine or delusional, continue to captivate and challenge us, inviting us to ponder the mysteries of faith, history, and the human spirit. Now, as we shift our focus to the realm of modern science, let's explore how contemporary medical perspectives attempt to unravel the mystery of Joan's voices. For centuries, her claims of hearing divine messages have been a subject of fascination and debate. Today, researchers and historians alike have turned to medical theories to explain her experiences, offering insights that bridge the gap between the medieval and the modern. One of the most discussed theories is that Joan may have suffered from epilepsy, specifically a form known as temporal lobe epilepsy. This condition can cause vivid auditory and visual hallucinations, often described as spiritual or mystical experiences. For someone like Joan, living in a deeply religious society, these episodes could easily have been interpreted as divine communication. The intensity and clarity of her visions align with symptoms reported by individuals with this condition, making it a compelling possibility. Another theory points to schizophrenia, a mental health disorder characterized by hallucinations and delusions. Joan's unwavering belief in her voices, her ability to hear them clearly, and her conviction that they were real could suggest symptoms consistent with schizophrenia. However, this theory is complicated by the fact that Joan displayed remarkable clarity, focus, and leadership, traits not typically associated with the disorder. Her ability to strategize, inspire troops, and navigate complex political landscapes challenges the idea that she was experiencing a debilitating mental illness. Auditory hallucinations, a symptom that can occur independently of other conditions, have also been proposed as an explanation. These hallucinations can be triggered by extreme stress, trauma, or even sleep deprivation, all factors that Joan likely experienced during her tumultuous life. The pressures of war, her imprisonment, and the constant scrutiny she faced could have contributed to such experiences. Yet this theory, like the others, raises questions about the specificity and consistency of her voices, which provided detailed guidance and reassurance. While these medical perspectives offer intriguing possibilities, it's important to acknowledge the limitations of retroactive diagnosis. Diagnosing historical figures based on fragmented accounts and centuries-old records is inherently speculative. The language used to describe Joan's experiences was shaped by the religious and cultural context of her time, making it difficult to apply modern medical frameworks with certainty. Additionally, the absence of first-hand medical records or detailed observations of her behavior further complicates the process. What's clear, however, is that Joan's voices were deeply real to her, shaping her actions and defining her legacy. Whether viewed through the lens of medicine or spirituality, her experiences continue to challenge our understanding of the human mind and its capacity for extraordinary belief. As we move forward, we'll explore how these voices have been interpreted from a spiritual perspective, offering yet another layer to this enduring mystery. Now, let's turn our attention to the spiritual perspective, where Joan's voices are seen not as a product of illness or hallucination, but as a genuine connection to the divine. For many, the accuracy and specificity of her visions are key evidence supporting this interpretation. Joan's voices didn't just offer vague guidance, they provided precise instructions, such as the location of a hidden sword at the church of Saint Catherine de Fierbois, which she later used as a symbol of her divine mission. These details, coupled with her ability to predict military outcomes, like the lifting of the Siege of Orléans, suggest a level of insight that goes beyond mere coincidence or imagination. From a Catholic perspective, Joan's experiences align closely with the concept of divine revelation. Saints and mystics throughout history have reported hearing voices or receiving visions, often interpreted as direct communication from God or heavenly beings. Joan's claims of hearing Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret fit within this tradition, and her unwavering faith in their messages reflects the deep spiritual conviction that has long been celebrated in Catholic teachings. Her ability to inspire others, rally troops, and lead with such confidence further supports the idea that her voices were not just personal delusions, but a divine gift meant to serve a higher purpose. It's also worth noting that Joan's voices consistently urged her to act in ways that aligned with Catholic doctrine. She was instructed to lead a virtuous life, to remain chaste, and to dedicate herself to the liberation of France, a mission she saw as both patriotic and holy. Her actions, guided by these voices, were seen by many as evidence of her divine favor. Even during her trial, when faced with immense pressure to recant, Joan refused to deny her voices, declaring that they came from God. This steadfastness, even in the face of death, has been interpreted by believers as a testament to the authenticity of her spiritual experiences. Of course, the spiritual perspective doesn't seek to explain Joan's voices through medical or psychological frameworks. Instead, it embraces the mystery and wonder of her experiences, viewing them as part of a larger divine plan. For those who see Joan as a saint and a martyr, her voices are not just a historical curiosity, but a profound reminder of the ways in which faith can shape and transform lives. As we continue to explore Joan's legacy, we'll see how these spiritual interpretations have influenced her enduring impact on both religion and culture. Now, shifting our focus to the cultural realm, Joan of Arc's story has transcended history to become a powerful symbol in literature, art, film, and popular culture. Over the centuries, her life has been reimagined in countless ways, each reflecting the values and concerns of the time. In literature, Joan has been portrayed as everything from a divine heroine to a tragic figure. Writers like Mark Twain, in his novel Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc, celebrated her as a paragon of virtue and courage, while others, such as George Bernard Shaw in his play Saint Joan, explored the complexities of her character and the political forces that shaped her fate. These works not only highlight her historical significance, but also invite readers to grapple with the enduring questions surrounding her voices and mission. In the world of art, Joan has been a frequent subject, often depicted in moments of triumph or martyrdom. Paintings like Jules Lepage, Joan of Arc capture her in a moment of divine inspiration, her gaze fixed on the heavens, while others, like Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, Joan of Arc at the coronation of Charles VII, emphasize her role as a military leader and national symbol. These artistic interpretations reveal how Joan's image has been shaped by the cultural and political contexts of different eras, from the romanticism of the 19th century to the modern fascination with her as a feminist icon. Film and television have also played a significant role in shaping Joan's legacy. From Carl Theodor Dreyer's haunting silent film, The Passion of Joan of Arc, to Luc Besson's visually stunning The Messenger, filmmakers have brought her story to life in ways that resonate with contemporary audiences. Each adaptation offers a unique perspective, whether focusing on her spiritual journey, her military achievements, or the tragic injustice of her trial. These portrayals not only entertain but also invite viewers to reflect on the timeless themes of faith, courage, and resilience that Joan embodies. In popular culture, Joan's influence extends even further. She has been referenced in music, from Leonard Cohen's poetic lyrics to modern pop songs, and has inspired characters in video games and comic books. Her image has been used in advertising, political campaigns, and even fashion, demonstrating her enduring appeal as a symbol of strength and defiance. These diverse depictions show how Joan's story continues to evolve, adapting to new mediums and audiences while retaining its core themes. What's fascinating is how these cultural portrayals reflect changing attitudes toward Joan's legacy. In some eras, she is celebrated as a saint and a patriot, while in others, she is seen as a rebel or a victim of systemic oppression. These shifting interpretations reveal not only the complexity of her story, but also the ways in which societies use historical figures to explore their own values and struggles. As we move forward, we'll see how Joan's legacy continues to inspire and challenge us, reminding us of the power of one individual to shape history and culture. Turning our attention to Joan's lasting influence on France, her legacy is deeply woven into the fabric of French national identity. Joan of Arc is more than just a historical figure. She is a symbol of resistance, unity, and patriotism that continues to inspire the French people. Her story, marked by courage and sacrifice, has become a cornerstone of French pride, representing the nation's ability to rise against adversity and reclaim its sovereignty. During times of crisis, Joan's image has often been invoked to rally the French spirit. For instance, during the French Revolution, she was celebrated as a symbol of the people's struggle against tyranny. Later, in the 19th century, as France sought to rebuild its national identity after the turmoil of the Napoleonic era, Joan was embraced as a unifying figure, embodying the virtues of loyalty and devotion to the homeland. Her canonization in 1920 further cemented her status as a national icon, blending religious reverence with patriotic fervor. In the realm of politics, Joan's legacy has been used to champion various causes. Political leaders and movements have drawn on her story to inspire unity and resilience, particularly during periods of conflict or division. For example, during World War II, Joan became a powerful symbol of resistance against occupation, with her image appearing in propaganda posters and speeches to galvanize the French resistance. Even today, her name is invoked in political discourse, often as a reminder of the importance of standing firm in the face of challenges. Culturally, Joan's influence is equally profound. She has inspired countless works of art, literature, and music, each reflecting the values and struggles of their time. Her story is taught in schools, ensuring that new generations understand her role in shaping France's history. Festivals and memorials dedicated to her life and achievements are held across the country, keeping her memory alive and relevant. What makes Joan's legacy so enduring is its ability to adapt to the needs and aspirations of each generation. Whether as a saint, a warrior, or a symbol of national pride, Joan of Arc continues to resonate with the French people, reminding them of their shared history and the power of collective resolve. As we move forward, her story remains a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit and the unbreakable bond between a nation and its heroes. Now, let's shift our focus to another remarkable aspect of Joan of Arc's legacy, her influence on feminism. In a world dominated by men, Joan's story stands as a powerful testament to the strength and capability of women. At a time when women were largely confined to traditional roles, Joan defied societal expectations, leading armies and shaping the course of history. Her courage and determination have made her an enduring symbol for feminist movements, challenging the gender norms of her era and inspiring generations of women to break barriers. Joan's rise to prominence was nothing short of extraordinary. In the 15th century, women were rarely seen in positions of power, let alone on the battlefield. Yet, Joan's unwavering belief in her divine mission allowed her to transcend these limitations. She not only convinced powerful men to trust her, but also led French troops to pivotal victories, proving that leadership and bravery are not bound by gender. Her story became a beacon of hope for women who sought to challenge the status quo, showing that even in the face of overwhelming odds, change is possible. Over the centuries, Joan's legacy has been embraced by feminist movements as a symbol of empowerment. During the suffrage movements of the 19th and early 20th centuries, Joan was often invoked as a figure who embodied the fight for equality. Her ability to navigate a male-dominated world with confidence and conviction resonated deeply with women striving for political and social rights. Even today, her story continues to inspire discussions about gender roles and the importance of representation in leadership. What makes Joan's influence on feminism particularly compelling is her ability to challenge stereotypes without conforming to them. She did not seek to imitate male leaders. Instead, she carved out her own path, guided by her faith and sense of purpose. This authenticity has made her a relatable and enduring figure for women across the globe. Her life reminds us that true empowerment comes from embracing one's identity and using it to drive meaningful change. As we reflect on Joan's impact, it's clear that her story transcends time. She not only reshaped the course of French history, but also left an indelible mark on the fight for gender equality. Her legacy continues to inspire women to challenge societal norms, pursue their ambitions, and redefine what it means to be a leader. And as we move forward, her story serves as a powerful reminder that courage knows no gender. Next, we'll explore how historians have debated Joan's life and legacy, shedding light on the controversies and differing perspectives that surround her extraordinary story. Turning our attention to the debates among historians, Joan of Arc's life and legacy have sparked a wide range of interpretations and controversies. While some view her as a divinely inspired heroine, others question the authenticity of her voices and the political forces that shaped her story. These differing perspectives offer a fascinating glimpse into how history is often shaped by the lens through which it is viewed. One of the most hotly debated aspects of Joan's life is the nature of her voices. Some historians argue that her visions of Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret were genuine divine interventions, pointing to the accuracy of her predictions and the extraordinary success she achieved despite her lack of military training. These scholars often emphasize the deeply religious context of medieval Europe, where divine intervention was widely accepted as a plausible explanation for extraordinary events. For them, Joan's voices were not only real but also a testament to her unwavering faith and connection to the divine. On the other hand, skeptics propose alternative explanations for Joan's experiences. Some suggest that her voices may have been the result of psychological conditions, such as epilepsy or auditory hallucinations, exacerbated by the intense stress and trauma of living in a war-torn society. Others argue that her visions could have been influenced by the religious fervor of the time, with Joan internalizing the spiritual expectations placed upon her. These perspectives challenge the notion of divine intervention, instead framing her experiences as a product of her environment and personal psychology. Political motivations behind Joan's trial and execution also remain a subject of intense scrutiny. Many historians highlight the role of the English and their Burgundian allies in orchestrating her trial, viewing it as a calculated move to discredit her and undermine French morale. By charging her with heresy and witchcraft, her enemies sought to erase her influence and delegitimize the French crown's claim to divine favor. This perspective underscores the trial as a politically motivated act rather than a genuine pursuit of justice. However, some historians argue that the trial was more complex, reflecting the broader tensions of the time. They point to the involvement of French clergy, who may have seen Joan as a threat to their authority, as well as the broader societal fears surrounding women who defied traditional roles. These interpretations suggest that Joan's trial was not solely a product of English manipulation, but also a reflection of the deep-seated anxieties and power struggles within medieval society. As we explore these debates, it becomes clear that Joan's story is far from straightforward. Historians continue to grapple with questions about her voices, her trial, and the broader implications of her legacy. These differing perspectives remind us that history is rarely black and white, but rather a tapestry of interpretations shaped by the context in which they are formed. And as we move forward, these debates invite us to consider how we interpret the past and what it means to truly understand a figure as complex and enigmatic as Joan of Arc. Next, we'll delve into how modern psychology interprets Joan's experiences, offering new insights into the mysteries that have captivated historians for centuries. Now, let's shift our focus to how modern psychology sheds light on Joan of Arc's extraordinary experiences. In today's world, psychologists and researchers have examined her voices through the lens of mental health, trauma, and the human mind's response to extreme stress. This perspective offers a fresh way to understand what Joan might have been going through, blending historical context with contemporary science. One of the most compelling theories is that Joan's voices could have been a form of auditory hallucination, a phenomenon where individuals hear sounds or voices that aren't actually present. Auditory hallucinations are often linked to conditions like schizophrenia, but they can also occur in people without mental illness, especially under extreme stress or trauma. Given the chaos of the 100 Years' War and the immense pressure Joan faced, it's possible that her mind created these voices as a coping mechanism. For Joan, these voices may have provided a sense of purpose and direction during a time of overwhelming uncertainty. Another angle explored by modern psychology is the role of religious fervor and cultural conditioning. In medieval Europe, religion permeated every aspect of life, and divine visions were not uncommon. Joan grew up in a deeply religious environment where stories of saints and miracles were part of everyday life. This cultural backdrop could have influenced her perceptions, making it more likely for her to interpret her experiences as divine messages. Psychologists suggest that her voices might have been a way for her to reconcile her personal convictions with the expectations of her society. Stress and trauma also play a significant role in shaping perceptions. Joan lived in a time of constant warfare where violence and instability were the norm. The psychological toll of such an environment can't be underestimated. Prolonged exposure to stress can alter the brain's functioning, potentially leading to heightened states of awareness or even dissociative experiences. For Joan, the voices might have been a way to process the trauma of her surroundings, giving her a sense of control and clarity in a world that felt anything but stable. Some researchers have also considered the possibility of temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition that can cause vivid hallucinations and intense spiritual experiences. People with this condition often report hearing voices or seeing visions that feel profoundly real. While we can't diagnose Joan posthumously, this theory offers another plausible explanation for her experiences, especially given the detailed and consistent nature of her visions. What's fascinating is how these modern interpretations don't necessarily diminish Joan's legacy. Instead, they add layers to our understanding of her story. Whether her voices were divine, psychological, or a combination of both, they undeniably shaped her actions and her impact on history. By examining her experiences through the lens of psychology, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity of her life and the extraordinary circumstances that defined it. As we continue to explore Joan's story, we'll next turn to how different religious traditions have interpreted her voices, offering yet another perspective on this enduring mystery. Now, let's step into the realm of faith and belief, where Joan of Arc's voices take on a profoundly spiritual dimension. Across different religious traditions, her experiences have been interpreted in ways that reflect the values, doctrines, and cultural contexts of each faith. These interpretations not only shed light on Joan's story, but also reveal how religion shapes our understanding of the divine and the mysterious. From a Catholic perspective, Joan's voices are often seen as a direct manifestation of God's will. The Catholic Church, which ultimately canonized her as a saint, views her visions as evidence of divine intervention. Saints Michael, Catherine, and Margaret, the figures Joan claimed to hear, are venerated within Catholicism, lending credibility to her account. For Catholics, Joan's voices align with the tradition of saints and mystics who received heavenly messages, reinforcing the idea that God speaks to humanity through chosen individuals. Her unwavering faith and the accuracy of her prophecies, such as predicting French victories, are seen as proof of her divine mission. Protestant interpretations, however, often take a more cautious approach. While many Protestants admire Joan's courage and conviction, they tend to be skeptical of claims of direct divine communication. Protestant theology emphasizes the authority of Scripture over personal revelation, leading some to question whether Joan's voices were truly from God or a product of her own fervent imagination. Yet, even within this skepticism, Joan is often celebrated as a symbol of faith and resistance, her story serving as a reminder of the power of individual belief in the face of adversity. Secular perspectives offer yet another lens through which to view Joan's voices. For those outside religious frameworks, her experiences are often explained through psychological, cultural, or historical contexts rather than divine intervention. Secular interpretations might focus on the societal pressures of medieval Europe, where religion dominated daily life, and visions of saints were a common way to express personal convictions. From this viewpoint, Joan's voices could be seen as a reflection of her inner strength and determination, channeled through the language of her time. The theological implications of Joan's claims are profound. If her voices were indeed divine, they challenge us to consider how God communicates with humanity and what it means to be chosen for a sacred mission. If they were a product of her environment or psychology, they invite us to explore the ways in which faith and culture intersect to shape our understanding of the extraordinary. Either way, Joan's story raises questions about the nature of revelation, the role of faith in history, and the boundaries between the divine and the human. As we move forward, we'll delve into how Joan's voices influenced her military strategies and the broader concept of divine intervention in warfare, uncovering yet another layer of this fascinating historical figure. Now let's turn our attention to the battlefield, where Joan of Arc's voices not only shaped her destiny, but also left an indelible mark on the art of warfare. Joan's impact on military strategy was as profound as it was unexpected. At a time when warfare was dominated by seasoned generals and rigid tactics, Joan brought something entirely new to the table, a sense of divine purpose that transformed the morale and strategy of the French army. Joan's most significant contribution was her ability to inspire. Her unwavering belief in her divine mission gave the French troops a renewed sense of hope and determination. Before her arrival, the French army was demoralized, struggling against the English forces that had occupied much of their land. But Joan's presence changed everything. She didn't just lead soldiers, she rallied them with a conviction that they were fighting for a higher cause. This shift in morale was crucial, as it turned a fragmented and disheartened army into a unified force capable of achieving remarkable victories. One of the most striking examples of Joan's influence was her role in the Siege of Orléans. Here, she demonstrated not only her spiritual fervor, but also a keen understanding of military tactics. Joan's insistence on aggressive, decisive action broke the stalemate that had plagued the French for months. She personally led charges, often placing herself at the front lines, which not only boosted the soldiers' confidence but also disrupted the enemy's expectations. Her ability to combine faith with strategy was unprecedented, and it proved to be a turning point in the 100 Years' War. But Joan's impact extended beyond the battlefield. Her story introduced the concept of divine intervention into the realm of warfare, a notion that would resonate for centuries. By claiming that her victories were guided by heavenly voices, Joan blurred the lines between the spiritual and the strategic. This idea of fighting under divine favor became a powerful tool, used by leaders to justify wars and rally their troops. In many ways, Joan's legacy paved the way for the idea that wars could be holy, fought not just for land or power but for the will of God. However, this same legacy has also been critiqued. Joan's story has been used to question the morality of religious wars. If divine intervention can be claimed by one side, who is to say it cannot be claimed by another? This raises difficult questions about the nature of faith and conflict. Joan's life serves as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale, reminding us of the fine line between divine mission and human ambition. As we reflect on Joan's contributions to warfare, it's clear that her influence was as much about the spirit as it was about strategy. She redefined what it meant to lead an army, blending faith, courage, and tactical insight in a way that continues to captivate and challenge us. Next, we'll explore how Joan's story resonates in the modern world, examining her enduring legacy and the lessons she offers for today. Now, as we step into the modern world, Joan of Arc's story continues to resonate in ways that transcend time and geography. Her legacy is no longer confined to the battlefields of medieval France, but has become a universal symbol of courage, faith, and resilience. In a world that often feels divided and uncertain, Joan's unwavering determination and belief in her mission offer a powerful reminder of what it means to stand firm in the face of adversity. One of the most striking aspects of Joan's modern relevance is her role as an icon of empowerment. In an era where women are still breaking barriers and challenging stereotypes, Joan's story serves as a beacon of inspiration. She defied the rigid gender norms of her time, leading armies and shaping history in a way that few women of her era could even imagine. Today, she is celebrated not just as a historical figure, but as a symbol of what can be achieved when courage meets conviction. Her life reminds us that true strength lies not in physical power but in the courage to pursue what we believe is right, no matter the odds. Joan's story also speaks to the power of faith, not just religious faith but faith in oneself and in a greater purpose. In a world where many struggle with doubt and uncertainty, Joan's unshakable belief in her divine mission offers a compelling example of how faith can guide and sustain us through even the darkest times. Her voices, whether seen as divine or delusional, represent a profound connection to something beyond the self, a reminder that we are all part of a larger story. Beyond her symbolic significance, Joan's legacy has practical lessons for the modern world. Her ability to unite people under a common cause is particularly relevant in an age of division. Joan didn't just lead soldiers, she inspired them to believe in something greater than themselves. This ability to rally others around a shared vision is a skill that remains invaluable today, whether in leadership, activism, or community building. Her story teaches us that true leadership is about more than strategy. It's about inspiring others to see the possibility of a better future. Joan's influence extends into popular culture as well, where she has been reimagined in countless books, films, and artworks. Each interpretation reflects the values and struggles of its time, proving that her story is not static but evolves with the world around it. Whether portrayed as a warrior, a martyr, or a visionary, Joan continues to captivate audiences, offering new insights and inspiration with each retelling. As we look to the future, Joan of Arc's legacy challenges us to reflect on our own lives. What are the voices that guide us? What causes are worth fighting for? And how can we, like Joan, find the courage to stand up for what we believe in, even when the odds seem insurmountable? Her story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, one person's courage can change the course of history. Next, we'll bring our exploration of Joan's life to a close, summarizing the key points of her extraordinary journey and inviting you to share your thoughts on her enduring legacy. As we draw this exploration to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the extraordinary life of Joan of Arc and the enduring mystery that surrounds her. From her humble beginnings in Domrémy to her rise as a military leader and her tragic end at the stake, Joan's story is one of courage, faith, and resilience. But at the heart of her legacy lies the question that has captivated historians, theologians, and psychologists for centuries. Were her voices a divine gift or a sign of madness? We've examined the historical context of her visions, the impact of her military campaigns, and the debates that continue to swirl around her experiences. Whether you see her voices as a heavenly intervention or a product of her time and circumstances, one thing is clear: Joan's unwavering belief in her mission changed the course of history. Her story challenges us to consider the power of conviction and the ways in which faith, whether spiritual or personal, can shape our lives. Now we turn to you. What do you think about Joan's voices? Were they a divine gift guiding her to save France, or were they a reflection of the pressures and turmoil of her time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this fascinating historical mystery. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Joan of Arc's life, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories from history that will intrigue, inspire, and challenge your understanding of the past. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep uncovering the mysteries that shape our world.